Welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything by default. I am your host, the great Demosthenes, and with me today is our okay co-host, Mr. Kyle Nash. How you doing?
So if you're going to go that angle, it's got to be Demosthenes the Great. Like, you got to do that like you're some sort of like dictator or somebody who might be overthrown by an army of acrobats and tumblers, something like that.
So in today's episode of Default Assault, we're going to focus on some of the most underrated comedies ever made. A lot of people seem to complain, and more as the years pass on, that they're good, really good comedies are too few and far between. Maybe that's partly, maybe it's because of people's very subjective taste when it comes to comedies. Some people like screwball, some people like slapstick, but we decided we're going to take a look at some of those that we consider underrated gems. So in tonight's episode, Kyle will be sharing his top three most underrated comedies of all time. And next week, I'll be sharing my top three underrated comedies of all time. So Kyle, what is your first pick for most underrated comedy?
Well, for my money, I'm going to go with something that's very good with the climate of things being all political and contentious. This would actually send a pretty positive message overall, but that's not the reason why I picked it as underrated comedy. It's just something you don't hear enough about as a movie that I thought was pretty damn gold and just didn't get enough props. And of course, I'm referring to the movie My Fellow Americans. Of course, you got James Garner, you got
Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon, thank you. You said it before I could. And then, of course, in the background there, you have Dan Aykroyd. A lot of other solid actors, appearances, but Kathy Bates. A lot of good people in there. And it's just a solid interaction. I mean, now it would probably be dubbed as not being possible to occur because the two candidates would show so much contempt for each other. One of them might get shot. But the premise of it is, two opposing candidates combine forces to uncover a conspiracy, and hilarity ensues. There's just a lot that goes on there, very unexpected moments, but some things that are just very clever too. Although I'll say this, if you want me to believe for 30 seconds that Jack Lemmon could actually speak Spanish, that's a whole other topic. But hey, I don't want to spoil too much for the movie.
I want to say that I remember that I remember seeing somewhere that he actually knew how to speak Spanish. I might be completely off. John Hurd is also in that cast. It has a tremendous cast. And I will say that although part of me is a little sad that Walter Matthau wasn't in it, he was originally slated to co-star with Jack Lemmon. They were in about 10 films together. The classic.
They never have chemistry together in this movie, Demos. Ha ha! Anyways.
Well, I missed that. What about chemistry?
How would they ever have chemistry together in this
movie? Yeah. Well, I mean... They only had up to then maybe 9 films to prove their worth. I guess
Yeah, but to that extent, I would argue that Matthau doesn't do the job in the Garner role the same way, at least from looks go, because he wouldn't be he would be too much of a caricature of a political candidate rather than actually being one. It's that's where I sit on that.
I can see why some people would have that idea, but if you go back to a lot of Walter Matthau's earlier films, if you look at, and this isn't that early, but late 70s, early 80s, when he did films like First Monday in October or Hopscotch, films that did have there were comedies but had a political leaning, he was fantastic. I think the only problem with him being in My Fellow Americans was at that particular point in his career, he probably would not have been up for the physical demands of that particular story.
Right.
He was never. He'd always had health problems, and he himself liked to joke about it. But anyway, we digress. When I think of My Fellow Americans, one scene comes to mind: the Jack Lemmon Museum, where they find the doll.
Sure.
Don't you fall into the trap. Democrats are full of crap.
Anything you really like, I can get it for you at cost.
I feel dirty.
It's a great rhyme. And how they both have their own version to the lyrics of Hail to the Chief was entertaining.
Yeah, they had great chemistry. Yeah, I mean, tell me a little bit more about why you love this movie before I crap all over it.
Well, yeah, right. I'll tell you what, they broach a lot of other topics. Like the best thing about it right now is if I sat in front of it, I still kind of feel like aspects of it hold up even today. And I think we're going on this thing being around 20 years old. Okay. This, like, there's allusions to racial issues,
Gay
LGBT,
rights?
yeah,
Yeah.
gay. Thank you. That's actually one of the funnier scenes in the whole damn movie. And then it's part of the plot that ties into that in itself. The reveal is entertaining. That's not a spoiler. That just says, hey, pay attention to, aspects of the gay rights comedy that's in there. There's racial stuff. There's poverty stuff that's touched on. And it also touches on just how dim-witted and flawed politicians are. It's not that like we needed more of a lesson on it, but I feel like it does what House of Cards does as a series, but far less dark. You could see it happening and you want to laugh at it rather than be like, dear God, I want to hide.
I wonder at what point we'll get to when My Fellow Americans is considered a semi-documentary.
I think we're too close, partner.
Oh, I mean, I'll tell you this much: both of those presidents, after the experiences they had in that movie,
Yeah.
were pro gay rights by the end of it. And when you think about the fact that some of the presidential candidates, the two that we had last year, and their stances on LGBT rights, hell, Hillary Clinton didn't even come out as pro LGBT, as pro marriage, gay marriage until 2013.
Interesting choice of words there, but go on.
I really do like My Fellow Americans. I don't know if I would really. I wouldn't have it in my top underrated films because I think it is kind of a well-known film. There are some issues I have with it towards.
Like no one talks about it.
Yeah, maybe it's just my college days. I mean, I remember watching it with huge groups of people, and that.
Yeah, we ain't seen it since.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I'm just talking about me personally. I'm not objecting to it being here.
I say that to kind of explain because you brought up a good point. I was like, gosh, Kyle, why didn't you? Well, first of all, the only time I ever saw a movie poster for it was on the wall at the AV tech room in my high school, which I had only been in the one time for some presentation thing. But after that, I only ever actually saw the movie on HBO, paid attention to it because I liked the cast, and never heard from it again. So, I mean, yeah, look, if you had these parties, and granted, you're more of a purist, you have more access to movies. We've established that I'm just, Joe Movie Lover up in this piece, although I still struggle to carry that title. That even with my air quotes movie lover status, dude, I would probably have to go the route of Jack Sparrow to acquire that movie easily.
That's an interesting point. It is. I think maybe it's because it wasn't a Lemon Math film. It kind of fell under the radar as compared to something like Grumpy Old Men or its sequel.
Because again, with that pairing, it would never hide.
I would say that it's probably better known than something like Out to Sea. Remember that? You have Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, and Data.
Needs to be forgotten. There's a difference.
It had some amusing moments. But no, My Fellow Americans is a much better film. I felt like some of the gags towards the end kind of went over the top when they're galloping on horses, through the White House lawn and stuff. But some of the political points it made were more biting than you would expect, and that's something I kind of respect about it.
Bingo.
So yes, if you haven't seen it, great cast. I would give it a recommendation. I give it a thumbs up. Bing! Kyle's choice, number 2.
Number 2 is definitely not number 2. It's a fantastic movie. I can pretty much guarantee that I have no reason having ever heard of it. But folks, I'm about to go Demosthenes and you all here. Go purest movie critic action on you here. Bring up a movie that dates, I believe it's to the 50s. course, I referred to Danny Kaye in The Court Jester. Now, folks, the reason why I call this underrated is there's plenty of movies of that age that still get dapped. Things like Some Like It Hot, which, oh, by the way, remember that pairing we talked about earlier? Boom. Mentioned as one of the best comedies of all time. Came out of kind of that era. I believe it was in totally in black and white at the time, et cetera, et cetera. And there's not a lot of old movies that you really know about that come from there. Matter of fact, I could argue that the thing most famous that from that era, comedy-wise, is the Three Stooges. And but you know, when you have movies that are that old that can still kind of hold up today, that again, if you still hold up this much time later, it's a beautiful thing. And that takes me to The Court Jester in and of itself. Fantastic movie. A lot of people that are in that movie young, you only recognize as old at this point in time. But, you know, Angela Lansbury, perhaps an example of one, you know, as the old chick from Murder, She Wrote, or the voice of Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast.
Very busty in that film, if memory serves.
I mean, if I didn't know what she looked like later, I'd have said she was kind of hot. Anyways, no, but Basil Rathbone, who ironically, if you link this to Demos's version, which will be coming up soon, he himself played Sherlock Holmes. He is the villain Ravenhurst in this movie. Of course, the ever-talented Danny Kaye, somebody who has Fred Astaire-style talent, but you don't hear about nowadays, and it's most unfortunate. But a great movie all the way around in The Court Jester. The comedy is intelligent. It's like one of the old variety shows, but it's never cheesy. Like there's a lot of musical numbers and things like that in it, but I don't find any of them except some of those like slow, you know, sentimental songs that you kind of have to sit through. There's one towards the beginning maybe where he's singing to the child with the purple pimpernel. Don't worry, it's not a spoiler. You'll know it soon in the plot. But the lot of the music numbers are fantastic, and really, there's one in particular where it being called The Court Jester, and Danny Kaye performs as such. The song in that movie is one of the things that is the funniest moments in the movie.
I started to travel to try to unravel my mind and to find a new chance. When I got to Spain, it was suddenly plain that the field that appeared was the dance. The Spanish were clannish, but I wouldn't vanish, and learned every step they had planned. The first step of all wasn't hard to recall, cause the first step of all is to stand. And stand. And stand. Julio!
And you know, there's action and all that in it, and it's like it's serious in a way that it's delivered seriously, but you can tell it's hilarious. There's just things in it that are cool, and there's all sorts of comedy. It you know, you ran through the different styles. You could have stuff that's slapstick, then this and that and the other thing. There's some little something for everybody in this movie. Still holds up today. It's a good, clean, fun kind of thing, man.
I didn't want to interrupt any of that because that was as a film lover, especially of older films, that was magical. I do want to point out the oddness of the fact that you did two things by picking The Court Jester. A, you picked the oldest film from both of our lists, which is extraordinary, and I think in a weird twist of fate, you're the first person to focus on and talk about a musical on Default Assault. So
I wouldn't call this a musical. It just has music in it.
It's very much a musical. There's a big song like every 3 minutes.
It's not that bad.
No, it's not bad. I think that it's kind of funny when I think of The Court Jester, I don't think of it as a musical right away either. But I think that's partly because it does something very, very well. It works in the songs to progress the plot. The film doesn't stop dead so they can sing.
That's a great point. I never thought of it that way. But yeah, the singing is in fact a plot device. The damn guy's a jester. He's going to be minstrelling and singing and doing silly stuff. I would take issue that it's a musical still, but I can see how it's good enough in the music that it might confuse people into thinking so. Totally backing that.
I also people will say, okay, well, it's from 1955. People will say, oh, it's underrated because nobody has heard of a movie that old. Any old comedy can fall into that. But here's one thing that a lot of people don't realize because The Court Jester, I think, is a decently well-known musical. Maybe not for people under 30, but it was a box office bomb when it came out. I believe, it was the most expensive comedy ever made up to that point. And it bombed, and it bombed hard, and it only earned its good reputation to a wide audience from TV repeats.
We'll see. That explains a lot as to why the studio is playing it so much, because they're trying to get the royalties to still recoup from the loss back in 1955.
Yeah, I will say this about The Court Jester: it is one of the sharpest, wittiest scripts I've seen in them film. I honestly, hearing some of the exchanges in this film, I'm amazed at how the actors could actually keep up with it.
I have put a pellet of poison in one of the vessels.
Which one?
The one with the figure of a pestle.
The vessel with the pestle.
Yes, but you don't want the vessel with the pestle. You want the chalice from the palace.
I don't want the vessel with the pestle. I want the chalice from the what?
The chalice from the palace.
It's a little crystal chalice with the figure of a palace.
Does the chalice from the palace have the pellet with the poison?
No, the pellet with the poison's in the vessel with the pestle.
Oh, the pestle with the vessel.
The vessel with the pestle.
What about the palace from the chalice?
Not the palace from the chalice from the palace.
Where's the pellet with the poison?
In the vessel with the pestle.
The poison's in the vessel with the pestle. The slagging with the dragon has the brew that is true. But first they have to break the chalice from the palace. So the chalice from the palace has the brew that is true. The vessel with the pestle has the pot with the poison. But then they break the chalice from the palace and they replace it with a flagon with a picture of a dragon. So then the vessel with the pestle has the pot with the poison. The flagon with the dragon has the brew that is true. True that is brew. Brew that is true.
Do you get it?
Got it.
Good.
I still had to recover from doing all that in one take, by the way. That was a little cruel.
Holy crap. I am impressed. Danny Kaye, wherever you are, I don't remember if you're alive or dead. I'm sure you're smiling right now.
Either way, I'll give him a little Maui. What can I say except you're welcome?
Basil Rathbone in that film is awesome. And if you haven't heard of Basil Rathbone, shame on you. God, he is. As much as I like Benedict Cumberbatch, as much as I like Robert Downey Jr., Basil Rathbone is the definitive Sherlock Holmes. But beyond that, he was also a world-class fencer, one of the best sword fighters in film history, appearing in films like The Adventures of Robin Hood. One of my personal favorites. Where are you? You're right behind me. There you are. The Mark of Zorro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it has one of the. You can, that's one thing that, just to bring some reference up to something modern day. When I recently saw Pirates of the Caribbean 5, where Jack Sparrow, spoiler alert, sword fights for maybe a minute and a half in the film, and it's
ruined.
Yeah, and every 2 seconds there's another cut. His sword fight scene in the Mark of Zorro. I hope I didn't say Mask earlier. That's a good movie too. But The Mark of Zorro, it's just breathtaking. And his sword fight in this film, when he was in his 60s, is just as riveting, and especially with the comic angle with Danny Kaye.
Two things. One, I'll start with this one first. Since you brought up the Mark of Zorro, Zorro actually translates to fox in Spanish. And the protagonist is, in fact, the Black Fox in The Court Jester, or one of the protagonists, I should say. And Basil Rathbone, Zorro versus the Black Fox. Very interesting there. However, I would also be forced to pop quiz you on this.
All right, fire away.
Rathbone is to Sherlock Holmes what Adam West, rest in peace, is to Batman. True or false? Go.
Oh, I would say true. If especially if you consider the Batman lore in the original. Well, it's changed a few times, but I think the more traditional idea is that Batman became Batman after going to see a screening with his parents of The Mark of Zorro, and that's when they got shot coming out of that film.
Whoa!
Yeah. Is that where you were going, or did I just go in a completely different direction?
Making a comparison. Not prepared for that. That whoa was legitimate because, well, I mean, you can't see it, but now I got to scrape and like, there's bits of my mind on the ceiling from where you just blew it. I'm just saying.
Here's another thing. You left out in your talk of the cast from the court jester. You left out another incredible leading lady, Glynis Johns. Most audiences will probably remember her as the mother in Mary Poppins.
God, I forgot about that because in her day she was had.
Oh yeah, the mother. So this film has the mother from Mary Poppins and Angela Lansbury from Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and Basil Rathbone's voice was used in The Great Mouse Detective. And we can keep going on and on. No, Court Jester is awesome. I absolutely love it. I love how it's really a story of identity. It is the quintessential mistaken identity film, and
yes, definitely.
It's taken in so many different fantastic directions, and just when you think that you're on top of it all, it takes different twists. Go see it. It's 100% agreed. So 100%. I'm.
You know, and you labeled it as a misidentity story. So many of those are just so poorly and cheesy done. Again, this is one of those where you kind of forget it's a missing identity case, but then they cut back over and they're like, oh, yeah, it is. That's right. That's the real guy. You know, I'm not saying more than that because spoilers, because you will watch these, I hope.
One of my favorites, without giving it away, involves stuttering and sign language. I'll leave it at that.
Yes, easily the best part. Well, in an effort of subterfuge, we could say that Danny Kaye does a great job. Danny
Kaye is awesome. He really carries his film, and it comes off so naturally. For a film that has so much, that focuses so much on identity, nothing comes off as false in this. Everything comes off as very genuine, which is fantastic. Fantastic choice. I'm looking forward to number 3 now.
Number 3 is one that you would not expect, and especially when I give the title, you would not expect that it is a comedy, although it does feature an actor that's also very active. In my other film, of course, I refer to Dan Aykroyd, his role as the president in My Fellow Americans. Not a president, the president, because he's actually the sitting president at the time, during the time when the film takes place. But I refer to Dan Aykroyd opposite Tom Hanks as the co-star there in I believe it was in the 1980s, and say 84 to 85, something like that. Could be wrong. But the punchline is Dragnet. That's right, bitches. Dragnet was a comedy. I mean, why not? Cop movies being comedies, people did that with 21 Jump Street. It was a complete waste of my time. Thank you very much. I said it. Jonah Hill overrated. Not Zach Galifianakis overrated, but he's bad. Anyway, no, Dragnet, fantastic movie all the way around. And what makes it so perfect is Dan Aykroyd doing the Jack Webb thing and just eats it up like it's a Thanksgiving feast. He's all up in there going, mauve and super mauve. Okay, so that's more appropriate with the time period of the Dragnet TV series, that term. Look it up because I don't even really know what it is. And if you're a millennial, you sure as hell don't. But
is it related to the Purple Pimpernel, whatever?
Purple Pimpernel?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
You mention the Purple Pimpernel to most kids nowadays, they'll be like, who's his bottom bitch? But I digress.
Her name is Violet.
Damn. Well played, Demos. Well played. No, but when it comes to Dragnet, fantastic movie. Another great cast. Tom Hanks, Dan Aykroyd already mentioned. Excuse me. Christopher Plummer. Not Plummer.
Christopher Plummer, yes.
I get him mixed up sometimes, his last name. But yeah, that's him. Plays the villain in this movie. Not really a spoiler right there. And just a lot of stuff going on. Dabney Coleman plays a Hugh Hefner type. Very hilarious. Very quotable movie. And it's trying to be serious throughout because that's what Dan Aykroyd's doing as Friday's nephew. Lieutenant Joe Friday's nephew. And hilarity ensues as these two LA cops try to solve the crimes leading up to the pagans, as they're called in the movie.
It's probably Dragnet is probably one of the first, if not the first. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I think it's definitely one of the very first comedy adaptations of a dramatic show. Something that's kind of become commonplace nowadays.
Right. Well, and it's done a lot with cop movies. I mean, it happened with Car 54. It happened obviously with 21 Jump Street, which was horrible, just like Car 54 was. And there have been other examples that just aren't coming to mind. This isn't like Police Academy, where it was, always is, and will be a comedy. Dragnet was damn serious, and the subject matter at the time could be some mind-blowing stuff. I mean, this was more Sherlock Holmes of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle days than the plucky stuff we get from Robert Downey Jr. now. And that's really the same kind of transition that's made in this movie.
I think that's probably one of its strengths, because ridiculous things do happen in this film, but it's played straight. You know, you have Dan Aykroyd saying things like,
proceeded to relate the details of our successful follow-up on the pagan robberies and briefed Captain Gannon on the outlandish festival we had attended, even going so far as to demonstrate the goat dance which we had engaged in as part of our undercover role in the operation.
This music was pulsating over and over and over again. The concept you're going for is the narration, where he comes in, this is the city, Los Angeles, California, blah, 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 right? And he's like, 8:55 p.m. This happened, and then we know skated. And like, then you watch these two dudes dancing in goat leggings in front of their chief. It's insane.
No, but they're playing it straight, except for Tom Hanks. He goes off the deep rail a little, but Dan Aykroyd's playing it like it's a serious film, and that's what works, I think.
Well, then eventually, like Strebeck, the character played by Dan Aykroyd, finds himself starting to play it straighter, and it's like almost like it's a disease he's catching, Excellent film all the way around. Quotable stuff all over the place. It's stuff that I still quote with my family today. Of lines that are just one-liners that go very well, and a very funny concept, in my opinion, all the way around.
What's kind of funny about Dragnet is it has a very distinct James Bond connection. Yes, I went there. It was the first time directorial debut of Tom Mankiewicz, who also was probably more well-known for scripting a slew of James Bond films in the early 70s, including Diamonds Are Forever, I believe Live and Let Die, and a couple of others. Diamonds Are Forever is still the one James Bond film that gnaws at my heart. Oh, man, but I digress. When I saw Dragnet when I was very young, if memory serves, it came out, I think, in 87.
Right.
I saw it on TV. It wasn't until years later that I finally saw the uncut, unedited version. Not that there was really, whenever they show something on TV, they butcher it. A 5-year-old could watch it and enjoy it, even though it's, I don't know why a 5-year-old would watch it. But the one thing that jumps out at me, the one memory that syncs perfectly up with this film, is the tank and the "Have a nice day" slogan at the front of his tank as it's barreling through a milk factory. I knew that day that if I was going to ever die in a freak tank accident, that would be the slogan on it.
But by default, if you've died by an accident like that, you haven't had a nice day.
It's called irony, my friend.
Some tank went up to you and said, "Hey, figure this motherfucker," and ran you over. How is that? Well, okay. Maybe the fact that you got to die ironically is a nice day for you. Me, I have some stuff to anyway.
Oh, no. My life goal is to die ironically. I mean, it's
my life goal is to die. Isn't that true of everybody? We're getting so existential on this show. Shit. Oh, I'm glad you set the bar at that place, because you might actually be able to clear that. I still haven't met my bar. Just saying. Oh, wait. Yes, I have. It's this place where I got this beer.
God damn it. See, this is why I have you as a co-host, Kyle. You make me look good. Thank you, buddy.
That's why I'm Kyle the OK, bitches.
So overall, you have a very good list. Make sure to tune in next week when I kick your list's ass with my 3 underrated picks. There's something else. I will say that the weird thing about this is my picks are surprisingly modern, with one exception. One's slightly older, but mine are actually very, very modern. It's almost like tying back to what we said at the beginning of this. I do feel that that is a major complaint, that no good comedies are made anymore, and that this kind of kicked off the very idea for these 2 episodes. Is, well, let's take a look. I mean, there are gems out there. If you just need to look a little beyond the mainstream, and I don't even want to say. I mean, but all the films are technically mainstream, but they kind of just slipped under the radar. And I'll leave it at that. Tune in next week for my list. Kyle, excellent list. I'm still stuck in the court jester. Thank you so much for bringing that on the show. Make sure to tune in next week. Follow me on HilarityByDefault.com, where I write about all sorts of movies, weekly movie reviews, default Disney reviews, and of course my 007 on the 7th review. Follow me on Twitter at Default Hilarity, and on Facebook, Hilarity by Default. Kyle, where can we find you?
Of course, you'll find me on Twitter at the SOTG, and of course on Facebook, the Student of the Game. Yeah, that'll be good times there. And I'll tell you this much about Demos' list real quick. There is one movie that he has that if I had my head out of my butt would have been on my list. So there you go. Next week, folks. Next week.
By default. So yeah, so long.